As the conflict continues in Ukraine, intensive fighting on the ground has been seen in Mariupol, with Russian troops said to be advancing in different directions. As more towns and cities come under the control of the People's Republics, we hear from locals about how Ukrainian soldiers are reportedly hiding behind civilians.
There was constant shelling. Children were all scared. Pregnant women were with us. The Ukrainian army was hiding among us.
An American journalist who was a former New York Times contributor is killed in a city near Kiev, where Russia's defense ministry claims civilians have been put in the firing line by local nationalists.
The Ukrainian naval ship Korets and other vessels left behind by Ukrainian naval personnel are now being searched. This is what this ship in particular has yielded.
Firearms, ammunitions, explosive and mapped coordinates are seized in ships left by retreating Ukrainian Navy personnel. Coming to you live from Moscow, you're watching RT International. My name's Peter Scott, and wherever you're joining us from, welcome to the programme. The conflict in Ukraine rages on, with unrelenting battles between Russian-led forces and Ukrainian troops now well into their third week. Let's start off by having a quick look at some of the latest developments from the war zone. Eyewitnesses have published video footage of multiple explosions in the Kharkiv region, where Russian troops are said to have targeted Ukrainian military infrastructure. Here you can see Russian drone footage showing Ukrainian fighters being hit. And there are some unverified reports also from this region that a plane was shot down, but the crew were reportedly able to eject. And also footage from the city of Volnovakha in the Donetsk region that's reportedly now under full control of Russian and Donetsk troops. The video shows a local hospital where it's claimed Ukrainian forces were using it as a military position. We heard from a woman who says she was forced to shelter from shelling in the basement.
There was constant shelling. Children were all scared. Pregnant women were with us. While the building was being stormed, we were in the basement because the Ukrainian army was hiding among us. They were not only on the upper floors of the building, but also in the basement with civilians.
And now to the city of Mariupol, where drone footage shows an intensive battle between Russian and Ukrainian forces on the ground. According to some reports, Russian troops have surrounded the city from different directions and advanced further in their attempts to take control of the area. In the town of Sartane near Mariupol, larger parts are now under control of the Donetsk army. However, many homes have been left badly damaged with no power or heating. It's claimed attempts to destroy the main bridge across the river by Ukrainian forces saw bombs hitting residential areas. Many locals also say they can't leave the town after green corridors were targeted. Nevertheless, the evacuation has been successful in another town near Mariupol called Stary Krim. People have been able to leave their homes, which, like in so many other areas hit by the conflict, are no longer fit for human habitation. And the problems are even harder when young children are involved. We heard from those who were forced to use the humanitarian corridors.
За детей очень опасность. Они уже даже боятся, уже по ночам спать не могут.
Негде жить. Дома свет выключили, в поселке выключили свет. У нас все на электричестве с маленьким ребенком. Пришлось по соседям ходить, проситься в подвалы. И поэтому, раз получилась возможность уехать, мы уехали.
People's Republic's troops are engaged in heavy battles in the north of the Donetsk Republic, and with the fighting getting harder, more people are using humanitarian corridors to flee. RT visited one of these places to hear local stories of life under the shelling.
We're driving towards the front line, from which ordinary people have been running in the last weeks. The signs and sounds of a close-by battlefield become more and more present. We stop the first convoy of cars we see.
Civilians are trying to flee the war zone
We're now going to talk to them.
Уже нереально находиться, стреляют, очень сильный обстрел идет.
See, there is a sign here, it says, kids inside. They hope someone will read it.
They believe this may protect them. Humanitarian and evacuation convoys are often shelled here in Donbas.
Да, мы все с Кудряшовки.
Почему решили?
Что большие бои там начались. Поэтому уехали. Дети, боятся все это, нужно вывозить детей. Поэтому уехали.
Как вы, малыши? Мама говорит, вы боитесь?
Да,
Что там?
страшно, сильно бомбят.
Давно?
Да, давно начали. Можно сказать, как только началась весна.
Знаете, как страшно, там в погребе 2 недели просидеть.
While her mom cannot stop crying, a little girl finds words to describe their situation.
Куда едешь?
Мы спасаемся.
We continue our journey. Varvarovka is where we stop. It is the most recent village to come under the control of the Lugansk army in this area. New authorities organize field kitchen and invite local residents. Not many accepted invitation so far.
Народ как берет, нормально идет.
А местные подходят, спрашивают?
Местные, да. Насыпаем. Ну, побаиваются, но так все нормально, привыкаю. Пока еще так
Они еще не
натянуто.
поняли.
Еще не поняли, кто, где хорошо, где плохо.
People here can't seem to get used to the sounds of fighting.
The front line is less than 10 kilometers away from here. We can see it from here and we can hear it from here. And this is the local church and this is where locals hide.
It's Sunday and the service is already over, but there is still a small crowd inside. The bells of this church are silent. Heavy artillery is the only sound heard here recently.
The towns of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk are right there, and they have been seeing of fierce fighting for many days. The forces of the Lugansk Republic have been attacking, but it's really hard for them to advance because there are many civilians trapped inside. And since they promised they will do their best to protect civilian population, it's really hard for them to advance. So there is not much progress at this point.
There are unverified videos showing Ukrainian forces deploying their weapons in the middle of residential areas. Some of those who managed to escape say it's all true.
Они между домами стоят, да.
They do indeed put tanks in school backyards and near houses, yes. The hide everywhere, and the shelling comes from all sides.
Numerous videos show people evacuating from frontline towns. There are groups on social media where people can find the latest updates. But it's clear that this is not enough to help all those who want to escape to a safer place. Marie Fnoshina, RT, from the Lugansk Republic.
And also battles continue around the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Among the cities that have been shelled was Bravary, where clouds of smoke were seen rising into the air after a local food depot was hit, although no casualties were reported. And now to the city of Irpin, where, according to Ukrainian authorities, 30% of the city is now under the control of the Russian army. Irpin is now largely empty, as most people fled in recent days. However, some locals remain hiding in basements. And staying with the city of Irpin in the Kiev region, where American journalist and documentary filmmaker Brent Renaud has been killed. The reporter is said to have been shot while he was en route to film the evacuation of civilians from the city. Local police claimed he was a New York Times reporter, although the outlet itself says he's not worked for them since 2015. The US National Security Advisor said an investigation will be held and appropriate measures taken. One of Renault's colleagues who survived the attack explained what he saw.
We crossed the first bridge in Irpin. We're going to film other refugees leaving, and we got onto a car. Somebody offered to take us to the other bridge, and we crossed a checkpoint, and they start shooting at us. So the driver turned around, and they kept shooting. It's two of us. My friend is Brent Renaud, and he's been shot and left behind. I saw him being shot in the neck, and we got split.
And after that incident in Irpin, the city's mayor announced he will stop allowing entry to all journalists.
While our city is being liberated, I'm strongly asking you to avoid crossing the bridge from Romanovka. Don't take photos of our troops' positions or their appearance. None of this is needed for the liberation of our city. Starting tomorrow, we will stop allowing journalists from Romanovka into our city. We don't want to risk the lives of our troops, because people are running around taking photos, posting them online, showing the enemy our positions. My friends, from tomorrow there won't be a single journalist in Irpin.
Ukrainian media outlets have been quick to blame Russia for the killing of the foreign journalist, which comes amid heavy fighting in the area around Kiev, with at least one bridge reported to have earlier been blown up by Ukrainian forces. The city of Irpin is now part of a key humanitarian corridor leading through Kiev, with some locals forced to cross the river under the bridge, the destroyed bridge, to escape the flashpoint. Moscow claims Kiev's nationalist battalions have been blowing up bridges as they retreat and damaging other civilian infrastructure there. As the fighting continues in Berdyansk, the Russian military has seized Ukrainian ships and everything that came with them. Our senior correspondent Rad Gazdiev takes up the story.
The city of Berdyansk, until just days ago a stronghold of the Ukrainian Navy, now testament to its fall. Two small armored attack boats of the Ukrainian Navy, both are in full working condition, both are stacked with ammunition, and both were also abandoned by Ukrainian naval servicemen who were stationed here aboard these two vessels. The Ukrainian Navy, by the way, planned on attacking the Russian Black Sea Fleet with these in swarm tactics and cause devastating damage to the Russian Navy. Nearby stands a much larger ship, the Korets, armed and geared for a fight that its crew wasn't ready for. The crew of this vessel left in such a hurry that almost nothing was sabotaged or destroyed. The captain's cabin is full of his personal things, as all the other cabins. None of the documentation was destroyed. The captain's log, other information about signals, about codes, everything's been left behind, and the vessel is still seaworthy.
A large number of firearms were seized here. Ammunition, explosives, mines, cannons, which would have been enough to defend Berdyansk for years.
The Ukrainian naval ship Korets and other vessels left behind by Ukrainian naval personnel are now being searched. This is what this ship in particular has yielded so far: crates and crates of ammunition, various high-caliber machine guns, autocannons. The arsenal itself is now being opened up, broken into by Russian troops, but inside it is much the same. None of this ammunition or weapons were put to use. A short drive away, Russian forces also took over an empty Coast Guard facility, arriving by land and by sea. More than half a dozen Ukrainian patrol boats stood at anchor. At this base, Ukrainian sailors left literally mid-meal. Beer empty, as well as towels, toothbrushes, people's clothes. And this is the scene we see everywhere aboard this Navy Coast Guard vessel. This is a naval Coast Guard facility of the Ukrainian Navy. But this is the scene we see absolutely everywhere. It is as if all these troops were either told that they have 5 minutes to pack up and to run, or that they heard that the Russians were coming and they chose to desert, chose to abandon their posts en masse. In all likelihood, it was panic, chaos. No documents were burned, no traps were set, no boats or equipment sabotaged, which suggests none of this was planned or controlled.
The ship was abandoned in a hurry. Look at all the food stores, the documents scattered here, which people left mid-sentence. All the clothes, SIM cards, phones. It's evident that they left as we approached, which indicates very low morale.
In all, thousands of Ukrainian Navy personnel who were stationed in Berdyansk fled. Many were locals. They simply went home as civilians, including senior staff. At the headquarters of the Ukrainian Navy in Berdyansk, Russian special forces cleared the empty building room by room. Protocol. The troops here too, including the commander, a Nosenko MV, abandoned the base without putting up any sort of a fight. They abandoned the base in a hurry. This is the office of the base commander. He left behind various documents as well as telephone numbers and frequencies of other commanders in the vicinity. All of this was left behind with computers, hard drives, laptops, all of which are now being transported out of here for analysis by Russian forces. At this point, the Ukrainian Navy is out of the picture. Elements survive in the port city of Odessa, but they have scuttled many of their ships in order to prevent their capture by Russian forces. And given Russia's stated goal, the full demilitarization of Ukraine, this seems to be the end, for now at least, of Ukraine's naval power. Murad Gazdiev from Berdyansk, Ukraine.
Global indignation at Russia's actions in Ukraine are continuing to see both the country and President Putin himself demonized on a daily basis. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken even compared the current situation with the siege of Leningrad during World War II, as RT's Konstantin Roshkov explains.
Mainstream media are speedily dusting off their knee-jerk Hitler comparisons for the new enemy du jour, for once highlighting Russia's unparalleled anti-Nazi struggle in World War II. But Donna Jester said it was only to try to stick the knife further into current leader Vladimir Putin.
Every Russian has learned about the siege of Leningrad during World War II. Sadly, history has repeated itself. But now it's the Russian government cruelly starving Ukrainian cities.
Dropping a bomb on a maternity hospital, it's the final proof that what is happening is genocide of Ukrainians.
Act on by their leaders and media, some protesters in the West have rushed to Photoshop Hitler's mustache to the Russian president's face or write his country's name with swastikas and SS symbols. The U.S. State Department's mouthpiece, Voice of America, never one to overanalyze or miss a tired anti-Russian jibe, simply dubs Vladimir Putin the new Hitler. It won't surprise experienced analysts, though, who will remember MSM's rush to make exactly the same comparison when Russia reunified with Crimea in 2015. But drawing parallels with the Second World War and playing with history like that is a two-way street, really. Here's, for example, another less than diplomatic history lesson from America's top diplomat.
It's impossible to see the images of people seeking refuge in Kyiv's metro in 2022 and not think of those who sheltered in the London Underground in 1942.
Okay then, how about the American Air Force dropping firebombs on Tokyo and killing more than 100,000 civilians in just 48 hours in 1945? Can we compare that incomparably more horrific assault to what's happening in Ukraine? Did it make Roosevelt the new Hitler, or does it make Putin the new Roosevelt? When a U.S. drone hit a car in Afghanistan in August, killing 10 family members, including 7 children, because the U.S. command apparently mistook them for terrorists, later admitting the wrongdoing, does it make Joe Biden the new Hitler?
It's an honest mistake. I understand the consequences, but it's not criminal conduct, random conduct, negligence.
A stupid thought without any proof, without any investigation. They attacked us and killed our children, and we will never forgive them.
When the Saudi-led coalition bombed a wedding in Yemen in 2018, killing 20 civilians there, does that make Saudi Arabia the new Nazi Germany? Why did Western leaders not talk about history and draw parallels with Hitler's Germany when the U.S. and other NATO countries bombed into the Middle Ages, Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Yugoslavia, which is also in Europe? Does it mean you can only become Hitler if you're not Washington's buddy? And if we stick to this logic, What can we say about Ukraine's leader himself, since his country has been shelling Donetsk and Lugansk breakaway republics for 8 years leading up to this war, with schools and hospitals being bombed, civilians, including children, killed? The official UN figures point to almost 14,000 people losing their lives during these long years of daily death and suffering. Does that make Vladimir Zelensky the new Hitler?
The Ukraine on your news and Ukraine in real life are two completely different countries, and the main difference between them is ours is real. You are told we are Nazis. But could a people who lost more than 8 million lives in the battle against Nazism support Nazism?
Yes, and still Vladimir Zelensky somehow has been tolerating torch processions in Ukraine's capital, glorifying Stepan Bandera, the Nazi collaborator responsible for unspeakable acts, massacres of thousands, and somehow viewed as a national hero by modern-day Ukrainian neo-Nazi mayors and lawmakers, let alone the spread of the far-right ideology among Ukraine's militia units that even Western media had to admit. And yet it's only Vladimir Putin's face being photoshopped and only Russia demonized as a country and people. The reasons for such unique discrimination on this scale may be a topic for analysis by cooler heads in years to come. If you're waiting for level-headed reasoning by the Western establishment, don't hold your breath.
The anti-Russian rhetoric has been there for quite a long time, at least 10 years, and therefore it's still the mentality of the Cold War. They are our enemy. Russia cannot be trusted. Their leaders cannot be trusted. And therefore, we have to make sure that we have security. Our armies are strong enough to resist. Putin can't really be compared with Hitler, because Hitler's objective was to exterminate millions of people. He didn't want to conquer them. He wanted to conquer territory and wipe these people out so that the Soviet Union or the Soviet people, the Russian people, would no longer exist. President Putin's goals are not the same. President Putin wants to demilitarize Ukraine and remove the Ukrainian army and also to denazify Ukraine, meaning to remove nationalist politicians who are very, very anti-Russian. So therefore, his war, Putin's war, is not one of extermination. It's not a racial war. It's a normal war of one army against another, so as to achieve the military objectives of Russia.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says another round of negotiations with Russia is scheduled to be held early on Monday in the format of a video conference. The Ukrainian side will seek to achieve direct negotiations with President Putin, along with other goals.
Our goal is that in this struggle, in this difficult negotiation process, Ukraine will receive the necessary result, which is necessary for us. For peace, for security, so that we have guarantees, normal and effective, not like in Budapest, not like in our sky, and such that the Ukrainians could say, this works, these are guarantees.
In other news, European leaders are urging people to be prepared to pay more when it comes to energy in order to defeat President Putin. They want the continent to sever its reliance on Russian oil and gas in response to the country's offensive in Ukraine. But gas prices are already going through the roof, and now steelmakers across the continent are also cutting back their operations as power prices surge. RT's Charlotte Dubensky has more details.
Well, the EU is on this mission to ditch Russian oil and gas, and that hit a pretty big hitch in the last week. That's because leaders who met at Versailles on Thursday and Friday couldn't agree on an all-out stoppage of buying that gas. However, what they've said they could do is they could achieve this by 2027, so in 5 years' time. Now, in the meantime, what the EU has said is it wants to reduce the reliance on Russian energy by around 2/3 by the end of this year. How is it going to do that? Well, it's talked about diversifying to other sources. That could be green energy, but that could also be energy coming in for other countries. The reality is, though, that this may not be a quick fix. For example, if the EU looks to the United States for imports of liquefied natural gas, there could actually be an incredibly long delay before that energy could substitute the amount of energy that Russia currently supplies. supplies.
The earliest possible where we can start making a dent is in 2 years, and then in 4 years, again, if we put all stops out, we can start delivering up to potentially 120 million tons.
Now, one of the reasons that the EU wants to shift away from Russia is the realization that just by buying oil from Russia at the moment, it's contributing some $285 million to the Russian government funds. And that's a backdoor way it thinks of the funding the current war in Ukraine. And as that war continues, we have already seen that oil prices have been hitting record highs for 14 years in the last week. The French Prime Minister has decided that the way that France is going to tackle that and help people with the price of petrol is to give them a discount of 15 centimes per litre from next month. And one of the reasons why France wants to do this is because the anger over soaring fuel prices back in 2018 is what originally led to the Yellow Vest protests, and that's something that the government probably doesn't want to have a repeat of. However, this discount that's been offered has already been criticised by the mayors from rural associations.
The problem that there will be is that no one knows to date what the price of fuel will be on April the 1st. Because if the fuel is at €2.50 a litre or €2.60 a litre on April the 1st, we will still arrive at fuel at €2.35 a litre.
And it's not just the price of petrol at the pump. Also, there is concern how this could hit energy bills at home and for businesses. For example, in Berlin, one energy supplier has had to warn its customers that its prices are going to go up by 26% from May the 1st. This is Gasec that supplies some 400,000 private homes in the city. So that is a pretty big deal. And we're seeing this kind of impact on other industries too. Some are deciding to cut production amid the soaring costs of energy. One company in the Czech Republic has been forced to suspend its production of a chemical that's used to extract precious metals from iron ore at its plant. And it says that's simply because it can't afford the cost, or it's not cost efficient anymore. We've also heard in Italy, one packaging group has suspended production at its paper mills. And here in France and also in neighbouring Spain, steelmakers have cut production, all citing the uneconomic and unviability of producing products with energy costs being so high.
Well, research fellow from the University of Hamburg, Bijan Tavasoli, believes Europe's actions are biting it back.
Sanctions that were supposed to hit Russia are like a boomerang, and they are hitting the European Union at its core, at its industrial strength. And Germany, as the industrial powerhouse of the European Union, is powered on Russian gas. And so if the natural gas from Russia should stop flowing or becomes more expensive, then that makes Germany lose its competitive edge. I don't think Europe thought through what industries and what consumers will be affected by these sanctions, because, as you all know, they were made up in a hurry, and they had no time to ask relevant experts for their expertise and to ask them what industries could be affected. But what we're seeing is that energy is in everything, you know? So everything is affected by rise in energy prices. All commodities are going through the roof right now, and especially things that depend on natural gas, because oil is the price of oil and oil products such as gasoline is rising around the world, but natural gas is rising particularly in the European Union. And so European consumers and producers, factories, they have to pay much more than other consumers of natural gas in other parts of the world, and their competitiveness dwindles. The cost of this will be for the German and European consumers to pay, but also the unemployment checks that we will have to hand out to possibly millions of people in the European Union, because they will lose their jobs if these sanctions are not taken back immediately.
Well, that's all for this hour. For the latest developments on the conflict in Ukraine, head over to RT.com. My name is Peter Scott, and thank you for watching.